welcome back to the Mind Castle. I'm Reagan, and Austin is here in the studio as well, and we're
That's me.
yeah we're tackling a topic that I really care about, and I think both of us have started realizing more lately than we used to, even though it's always kind of been there. You've heard this piece of advice. It says curiosity killed the cat.
Yeah.
What do you think people mean when they say such things?
I think they mean that, like, well, cats are very mischievous. And so I wonder if they don't mean, like, the cat was too curious and followed
killed him.
its mischievousness.
Yeah, that's a word.
Too far.
So
And it was bad.
Yeah, it's basically saying like being curious is detrimental to your physical well-being, or something to that effect. And we hear, and I'm using that as a bit of a case study, but we hear statements like that a lot back, especially growing up. Oh, curiosity killed the cat. Stay in your lane. And we don't ever really think about what that is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about that statement, curiosity killed the cat, that is woefully simplistic.
Yeah.
Like really, really simplistic. And, most pieces of pithy little wisdom like that are. In fact, I have this book called Beyond Wealth, which isn't really that good of a read, but there's one section in there that was interesting. And he was saying, be careful with those like one-liner wisdom truth bombs. And he gives a list. He's like, for example, these. And it's all like saying one way of like, boom, boom, all stuff we've all heard. And it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's true. And he's like, yes, but look at these. And then he lists an identical list, but they're all pithy statements that, again, I recognize all of them saying the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And he's like, see, you can just proof case whatever you want. So curiosity killed the cat, But then we have flip side, which is like, follow your passion and do what you want. It's just like, okay, hold on here, guys. We need to have a little more nuance. So what I'm getting at here is trying to dig into what is curiosity?
Okay.
Why does it matter?
Mm-hmm.
Where does it come from? Or maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you shouldn't, and you should just stay in your lane, keep your head down, do what you're told. Which is a very that has been tried by many societies and peoples over the course of history. So a lot of these questions came out of me doing a lot of self-reflection in the last couple of months on what is it I'm trying to do with all the writing and videos and things that I make. I try to, I'd make a decent amount of stuff for the internet. But if you look at my YouTube channel, it's kind of all over the place. So you'll have sometimes I'm, talking about traveling and going places and making travel videos, or analyzing my favorite books, or saying, hey, look at this really cool artifact I found in the middle of the, Iraqi desert, which is still some of my most favorite videos. You should check them out. Found Sennacherib's aqueduct system from about 2,600 years ago, still buried in the Iraqi farmland area, like in the valley there, and still not been fully excavated. Insane. One of the coolest things I've ever found. Anyways.
Whoa.
So what unifies all those things together? And I got a bit of a tip from Lex Friedman, actually. You familiar with
Who's Lex Friedman?
Oh my goodness. Interesting. Okay. Again, just like we said last episode, we're going to mention people. That doesn't mean we necessarily recommend them. He's a huge podcaster on science, technology, and specifically things like machine learning and AI. He's a research, or I'm not sure if he is anymore, but he was a research dude at MIT. I think his PhD is in artificial intelligence, something like that.
Whoa.
Absolute genius. Like, he's very, very, very intelligent. And so he's made a whole career on the side while he was at MIT, just interviewing interesting people about science and technology. So he started leveling up because he's really good at it. And before you know it, he has like Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, and he's got Elon Musk and, Ray Dalio, and like really, really big names. So he's went full time in the last year or so. I found his stuff really interesting, but I was like, man, it seems like it's spread all over the place. Like one day he's interviewing someone from Facebook, and the next day he's doing something on robotics, and the next day it's something on aliens and UFOs. Like, it's kind of all over the map. And somewhere, I forget which interview it was, but he said something about one of the key pieces he lives by is you find something like, oh, that's curious, that's interesting, and you just follow that thread and see where it takes you.
Okay.
And that really resonated with me. I was like, maybe that's why I'm really liking what I'm seeing here. It's just, that's curious, that's interesting. I should look into that and see where it takes you. And I realized I've been living my life that way for a very long time and never had the words to say it.
Yeah.
To never actually realize. And it's like, wait, and I immediately thought of, wait, that is exactly the opposite of curiosity killed the cat, So I was like, I gotta sit down and write this up. So I wrote it into a newsletter, which you can subscribe to my Substack and
Link
read it.
below.
Yeah, link below. Yeah. Shameless plug.
plug.
Yeah. Pluggity plug. Anyways, but I'm realizing that's actually perfectly describes what I'm doing. Like I'm following the things I'm curious about, the things I find interesting and meaningful and worthwhile, hopefully. And just seeing where it takes me, it seems almost too simple. Like I look at that, I'm like, wait, I thought, I'm trying to come up with like what my brand is and what I'm trying to do. I'm expanding, thinking some big philosophical construct. Yeah, like something, dramatic and flashy. And that's all I came up with. And I was like, it rings true.
Interesting.
And so
I have thoughts on that.
Guess what? Just like that, suddenly, I'm going deep down the rabbit hole of what is curiosity to begin with. So it got really meta really fast. But yeah, back to myself, I'm realizing, I'm fascinated by the curious, the unusual, the sometimes bizarre, and the always fascinating components of human nature.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really fun. But I will make a quick case for why I think being curious is absolutely essential for our lives.
Okay.
And then we'll dig into this a little bit more about just to kind of wrap it up a little bit. So again, Pat phrases curiosity killed the cat, which again I think is very simplistic. If you think about it, if at least some humans in the past weren't curious about the universe and how it works, pretty sure we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. We'd probably be sitting around a fire living that hunter-gatherer life.
Right.
Because someone had to be curious enough to be like, let's try inventing agriculture. Let's try inventing the wheel. Let's try building cities. Like someone had to figure that out for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it took real curiosity. It wasn't just like, I know this is going to work out awesome, so we're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Someone had to just try things. So I read this book on it. It's called Failure, Why Science is So Successful. It's actually really boring. It's like from Oxford or something. I'm not sure. Yeah, if you feel like it, go ahead and get it and read it if you want. But they're making the whole case that what makes science work and innovation and learning and things, what makes it work is someone usually is doing an experiment and says, oh, that's interesting. I didn't expect that. Or, oh, that's kind of odd. Let's pull on that thread a little bit. Let's explore that thing because that's curious. That's unusual. It doesn't fit. And that's usually how the greatest scientific discoveries are made. Mm-hmm. Almost always. Occasionally it just happens, but
occasionally it goes really sideways.
Yeah. And sometimes you get people that are evil and they pull on that thread the wrong direction. See Exhibit A, Hitler, Stalin, Karl Marx, some really bad people who had maybe some malicious motives or something. Maybe. Yeah, very malicious. But again, that was his whole point is like, if someone wasn't willing to try something and just be like, oh, let's see what happens, you wouldn't have a lot of the incredible breakthroughs in science and innovation. And those are overall, I would argue, a net positive. I mean, we have nice houses to live in now. We're not in wooden shelters in the woods. We know how to grow things. Yeah, exactly. We've invented air conditioning and refrigeration and
blankets.
Yeah, blankets. Yeah, like honestly, like these are things we just totally take for granted.
And if you guys could see me right now, you would understand why I said that, because I was cold last episode because I took a polar plunge and drank an iced latte. And I'm over here shivering, trying not to sound nervous on the mic. So in between episodes, I went and grabbed one of Reagan's blankets. So now I'm wearing a blanket, and it's great.
Very fluffy blankets.
It's
like I'm a huge fan. So anyways, that's the rabbit hole I was going down on. Like, what is curiosity and why is it even valuable? Like, because I know that for myself, that's a big thing. I mean, just look at my office. Like, it's a huge range of everything. I have this called my cabinet of curiosities. I've got everything from, a hand painting from Paris of the Eiffel Tower, some dude we met on the street, to like some old coins, to a piece of America's first space station, to a dinosaur tooth right over there. It's just kind of random, but like it keeps life very interesting for one thing. Mm-hmm. So anyways, I would love to hear your response.
Well, the first thing I thought of was, what do you do when, like, I think curiosity is like part of the equation, but I think there has to be another part of it that has to do with like pushing on even when it's not fun and it's not enjoyable. Like, so unless we're talking about two different things here, because I think about that with my work. So every single video I've ever made, well, let me rephrase that. Every video I've made in the last year, at some point, I sat there and stared at it and was like, this is never going to work. Like, this is a horrible idea. Everybody's going to hate it and they're going to think I'm stupid. And this is like imposter syndrome. Who am I to talk about this? This is not working. But I know instinctively that it's like, okay, maybe. But I always know that if I push just a little bit farther, I'll get through it and it'll open up and it'll be fine. But in that moment, it's like the curiosity got me into that topic, but it was in that moment of like deciding whether or not I'm going to quit or keep going or start over, where it didn't really feel like it had much to do with curiosity. It had more to do with like just discipline, and was like, just keep, like, this is right, like keep pushing on it. So I wonder if almost like maybe either we're talking about two different things, like where curiosity should keep you curious, keep you searching in life, and that's its own thing, or if we're talking about like if we apply it to all of life, then we have curiosity, but we also have to marry it with like some of these other really core foundational things like discipline and like hard work and things like that. Yeah, are we just talking about curiosity and like following what interests us and what we find interesting, or are you like applying this to all of life in all areas?
To an extent, I would argue all areas.
Okay.
Just to keep life from being a mundane drudgery.
Right. Yeah.
Like there, and this is another topic we'll maybe say for another episode, but the whole like quote, follow your passion, if you look at what makes people really love their careers, it's autonomy, like being able to experiment. Yeah. Because if it's a monotonous job, and we found this out in the Industrial Revolution, I mean, if it's like sitting there riveting one bolt on a car all day for 10 hours or 14 hours a day like they used to before, and 6 days a week, by the way, until one dude was like, hey, let's try a 40-hour work week. And everybody thought he was utterly insane. And then they actually made more stuff. And that's how we got the 40-hour work week, by the way. Another thread of curiosity.
Fun fact.
Yeah, fun fact. But they were realizing that actually if workers feel like they're boxed in doing something super mundane all the time, it dramatically affects productivity. And we're saying in an industrial sense, but even more so for like mind work, basically, or whatever you want to call that, intellectual work. So I would actually argue it's really important to have, because if you don't have that little spice of life in it, what's going to make you want to, how are you ever going to finish that video? All that to say, there obviously comes in some grit and discipline here. If you run into that wall in the creative process, there will absolutely be times where your discipline's going to have to kick in and say, hey, if I really care about this thing, I do have to see it through. There is hard work. Absolutely. You got to have that. I'm saying, though, if you don't have the curious element in there, you would have never started to begin with.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, and that's where I think just clarifying that is important. Because just like the caveat, or just like the thing of like curiosity killed the cat, we don't want to flip the other way and just say curiosity is all you need. Woohoo! Follow your curiosity.
Yeah, that would be a disaster. Yeah.
So I think it is important to bring in these other foundations, but make the point that curiosity needs to be one of the pillars of our life, which I think is really, really important.
And
I resonate with that a lot.
And realistically, it's very unlikely that your job is going to constantly be interesting and dynamic all the time.
Yeah.
That is very rare. But
it does
most jobs, you can find a few ways to bring that in. Almost, and again, unless you're a factory line worker doing the same thing for 8 hours a day, but even then,
you can listen to podcasts or something. Like there's always elements.
Or even go to your boss and say, hey, I wouldn't mind trying something new, or bring it on, hey, can I add another responsibility? Just kind of liven things up. Like there's always something like that, and yeah. So I think it's very important that we don't go down the street of just follow the curiosity thread and you'll make all the money you need. No, it's not that way at all. It is not that way at all. But I will say, if you don't have that curious streak in your life to keep life dynamic and interesting and in a way almost like meaningful, like this awareness of the world around you, it's gonna be pretty boring.
It will. And you won't be fulfilled in just your normal life in general. Like you won't be happy.
So I don't know. Some people might be. I don't know how far we want to go with it, but I do think, there's just real value in there. And the other part too that's really important is it makes you into a much more interesting person.
And dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I read this quote from another book, curiosity is essentially an attitude towards living. And it's kind of a neat attitude to be around. Like there's certain friends I have, like every time I see them, they've got some neat thing that they figured out. And they're just like, dude, like look at this thing. This is so cool. And I'll be like, wow, that is really neat. And it makes them a lot more fun to be with, because I'll come away being like, wow, that was fun and interesting. And I learned something that could potentially be very useful.
Yeah.
Which is actually maybe a topic for another time. But that's how I got down the deep down the rabbit hole of like test pilots at Edwards Air Force Base in the X-15 rocket plane and breaking the sound
Oh,
barrier.
yeah.
And like, there's some really fun stories there
Mhm.
that, does it have any economic value to my life? Probably not, but
Well, you made a YouTube video about it, so it might.
That's actually true. I did make a YouTube video about it because it's just like, wow, this is really interesting. So to kind of take it a little bit further, the future is latent with potential. Almost anything can happen there, which is something that I think is really important to keep in mind. But how we tap into that potential, or like how can we tap into that potential if we're not curious about the possibilities?
Right.
Basically.
Yeah.
And the flip side is, as you brought in, the future has potential for massive amounts of evil and chaos as well. So you don't want to walk blindly into that. And that's, again, where I think curiosity can help with that, is that awareness of, this could go the other way.
Yeah.
And being realistic about it. So yeah, being a curious person makes you way more interesting to be around. So it's not always utilitarian, but then again, it's kind of fun having this plethora of random things you can pull out.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a couple examples because I
have one too whenever you're done.
Yeah, I wrote these in some of my newsletter. But, plethora of fascinating facts. You never know. They might come in handy someday. Like, for example, Pepsi, the soda company.
Yes.
Had one of the largest navies in the world, 6th largest navy in
in
the world.
Okay. You told me that before.
Just what? It's a wild, wild story. Okay. Like, wow. Or there was another time during World War II, some dude invented a precision guided missile, but the guidance system was a live pigeon inside pecking on a screen, and I'm totally serious. Like, that actually happened. I can't imagine.
How did someone think that was a good idea?
Well, it kind of worked. That's what's so wild.
He probably was like, yeah, everybody thought that about Einstein too.
Well, exactly. That's what they did.
Einstein was actually a genius.
Yeah, but he was a patent office clerk, man. Anyways, but I mean, like, totally serious. Poor pigeon. I mean, if they would do that today, like, the mere thought of a kamikaze pigeon would just make animal rights groups go nuts. Probably today. Anyways,
that's a great picture.
It's kind of a bizarre thing. But all that to say, I ultimately see, curiosity is tied to a growth mindset.
Oh yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah, definitely.
It's. I'm not going to say impossible, but I think it's very difficult for someone to grow and develop, and in a sense level up their life if they don't have some element of curiosity. I mean, you would never learn new skills. You would never be testing your limits. Because you'd be like, it's kind of that sense of complacency. I'm great right here. And there are some people like that, and they turn out successful and have a decent life. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but you got to have that growth mindset.
Right.
This sense that it's okay to try new things, and you're going to fail, and it's all, that's fine. You'll learn something new. Like, failure is actually really good.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes we've been kind of taught that failure is bad, and sometimes it is. But generally, trying things and failing is a great way to learn, actually.
Yeah.
But anyways.
That this reminds me of one of the key teachings that I learned from Tony Robbins, and that is to live a fulfilling life, you always have to be learning and growing. And I think that, like, this is kind of the next level down. Maybe it's like, in order to keep learning and growing, you have to be curious, and you have to want to pursue that. Like, that's why I started learning Spanish. It's like, I wonder what it'd be like to be able to do this. Like, let's try and find out. Fun fact, it's a lot harder than you thought.
Yeah.
But that's really good. And I think a curious mindset is what keeps people young.
I really agree with
that. I think of our grandpa, who was very curious about lots of stuff. Just like watching where that led him, and also what the different stuff he did, and like, it was just like, I don't know. He had a youthfulness about him and a mischievousness that just never went away. And I think that's a lot of why. It was just, it was like,
Well, he was a straight up inventor.
He was,
building a forklift, building an elevator out of a forklift.
Yeah. Right.
Like, wait, how do you, like, to get to the upstairs of his barn? Like, how do you? I'm so confused, but it worked. I mean, it was a hodgepodge, but he's like, let's try. That could probably work. I got out some old parts from a forklift laying here, and we wire this up, put some cables here, and put this motor there, and voila, he had an elevator, and it worked for 20 years. It's like, I wouldn't even think to try something like that, but just having that mindset of, Hey, let's try this.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
I wonder what old,
Yeah, well, what could go wrong? Well, we could plummet to our deaths.
We could get stuck up there.
Well, that did happen. You know, elevator would take you up to the top of the barn, and then you just stuck in the loft.
It's like, yeah, too bad.
Suck, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, that's what I had on curiosity. I'd be really curious what audience members thinks. Audience, you all listening, I'd love to hear what y'all think about this, because maybe we overly simplified the other extreme. It could be, but I'm still pretty committed to it. It's tied to a growth mindset. I really believe that.
Yeah. I remembered my fun fact.
Oh, yes.
So did you know, I just read this in Ego's the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, page 141. It says, England's government only recently paid off debts it incurred as far back as 1720 from events like South Sea Bubble and Napoleonic Wars, the empire's abolishing of slavery, and the Irish potato famine. What? Meaning that in the 21st century, there was still a direct and daily connection to the 18th and 19th centuries.
That's what the potato famine and the Napoleonic Wars. Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is kind of
a fun fact.
Why would they take so long to pay it off?
Beats me.
That is really, really something right there.
Yeah.
Wow. I have a feeling it's going to be a recurring theme throughout this podcast. You know, learning interesting things and sharing them.
Yeah.
I think is a lot of the key. Now, you got to be careful with that because sometimes they're just kind of totally pointless. I know all kinds of absolutely pointless facts. So we probably won't do too many of those, but sometimes they're kind of fun. So, yeah. Anyways. Sweet. Well, thanks everyone for listening to this episode. Appreciate it. I'd love to hear your feedback on curiosity. Hit us up on Twitter and our websites, austinschrock.com, reaganschrock.com, and of course, Goodreads to see all the cool stuff we're reading. And goodbye. That's all I got. Yep. All right. We'll see y'all.